The world sees a monster. They read old prophecies of fire and ruin, and they look right at my sister. They see the end of everything. They see history unraveling, the final trumpet call, the beast that rises from the sea. They whisper her name in terror, believing she's the sentence passed down on them all, the final act in some grand play written before time even began. They see the small, black horns that curl from her hairline, and in them they see every one of their deepest fears confirmed. A mark, a sign, a destiny. But when I look at her, I just see Nayuta. I see the gap in her teeth when she smiles. I see the way she chases butterflies in the yard. Her laughter, this clumsy, beautiful sound that could never signal the end of anything. I see a child who hums when she's happy and cries when she's scraped her knee. And I made a promise to myself a long time ago. A promise that the world's fear would never, ever become hers. What if you were born to destroy the world? What if the scriptures and the prophecies all pointed to you, a child, as the catalyst for the apocalypse? This isn't a story about some chosen one destined for glory. It's about a girl chosen for destruction, and the brother who dared to stand in the way. This is the story of Nayuta. The whispers started before she could even walk. They drifted on the wind from the elders' halls, leaking out of sealed libraries where the ancient texts were kept. The prophecy wasn't new. It was a scar on the soul of our civilization. A story told to frighten children and caution kings. It talked about an age of ruin, brought on by a child marked by the beast. A child born with horns, a living symbol of the great beasts from the apocalyptic texts of old. I remember the day the elder council came to our home. I was just a boy myself, but I was old enough to understand the cold dread that filled that room. They didn't look at my parents. Their eyes were glued to the cradle where Nayuta slept, her tiny hands curled into fists. They saw the 2 bumps on her forehead, no bigger than pebbles back then, and their faces turned to stone. They read from a scroll, their voices trembling with a mix of reverence and horror. From the sea of chaos, a beast shall rise, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, one of them read, his finger tracing the words in a book that looked as old as the mountains themselves. It was from the book of Revelation, a text I'd come to know with a bitter familiarity. He then turned to the writings of the prophet Daniel, talking about a little horn that would rise to power, a being that would speak great words against the Most High and shall wear out the saints. In their minds, the connection was absolute. Those horns in the scripture weren't just symbols of kingdoms or political powers, they were literal. My sister, my beautiful sleeping Nayuta, was the little horn made flesh. She was the beast, the Antichrist, the end. That was the day our world shrank. My parents' friends stopped visiting. The market would go silent when we walked through. Kids who once played with me would be pulled inside by their mothers, their eyes wide with the ghost stories their parents now told them, stories about my sister. We weren't a family anymore. We were the keepers of a curse. They marked our door with warding signs. Priests would stand across the street, chanting prayers for protection. Not for us, but from us. They treated our home like a cage, and the child inside about it, a monster just waiting for its moment. The marking wasn't just on Nayuta's head, it was on our entire life. Society defined her before she could even say a single word. They built a prison of fear and superstition around her, every brick laid with Bible verses and tales of doom. They were gearing up for a war, and the enemy they were preparing for was a toddler who was just learning how to say my name. They didn't see a child. They saw a prophecy. And a prophecy is a powerful thing. It's a story that tells you the ending before you've even lived the beginning. For the world, Nayuta's story was already written. It ended in fire. But they never stopped to think that maybe prophecies aren't roadmaps. Sometimes they're just warnings. And sometimes the very people who fear the prophecy are the ones who make it come true. The agitation started as a low hum and grew into a roar. Fear, when you let it fester, curdles into hate, and hate demands action. It wasn't enough to just shun us. They had to control the threat they imagined. It started with the observers, men in dark coats who stood on the street corner, day and night, their notebooks filled with every detail of our lives. They documented when Nayuta played, when she cried, when she slept. They were hunting for signs, for proof that the monster was stirring. A normal childhood tantrum, recorded as a surge of unholy rage. A nightmare, interpreted as communing with dark forces. Her innocence was systematically twisted into proof of deception. Then the laws came. The Prophesied Child Emergency Act. It gave the state power to intervene, to contain anyone seen as a potential world-ending threat. It was a law written for just one person, a little girl who liked to draw flowers on the sidewalk with chalk. I came home from school one day and found our street blocked by military vehicles. Soldiers in full tactical gear, rifles raised, had formed a perimeter around our house. An officer was at the door, talking to my father in cold, clipped tones. They were there to assess Nayuta's abilities. They wanted to take her for testing. I saw her then, peeking from behind my mother's legs, her eyes wide, not with terror, but with confusion. She didn't understand why these men with loud voices and big guns were in her home. She clutched a worn-out stuffed dog, her only comfort. In that moment, the world's grand narrative of apocalypse and prophecy just collapsed into a single, sharp point. They were pointing their guns at my sister. That was the day the quiet promise I'd made to myself became a vow. This wasn't a passive hope anymore. It was an active war. They saw a beast with 10 horns. I saw a scared little girl. They quoted scripture. I remembered the lullabies my mother sang to her. Their fear was an abstraction, a story from a book. My love was real, a breathing, aching thing in my chest. As Nayuta grew, so did the world's aggression. They tried to take her, but my parents resisted. The confrontation escalated. Swords were drawn. These weren't ancient relics. They were gleaming, modern blades, wielded by zealots who joined the state security forces, believing they were the holy army destined to fight the apocalypse. They saw themselves as righteous crusaders. I just saw them as cowards, hiding their terror behind dogma. This is the part the prophecies don't tell you about. They talk about cosmic battles and falling stars, but they leave out the human part. They don't tell you about the suffocating reality of living under the shadow of a destiny you never even chose. They don't tell you about the brother who has to teach his sister how to control a power he doesn't understand, just because the alternative is letting the world provoke it out of her. While they plotted her end, I was teaching her how to read. While they built stronger walls to contain her, I was showing her how to climb trees. I had to be her brother and her keeper. I disciplined her, not out of anger, but out of desperation. A normal kid's outburst could be mistaken for the beginning of the end. If she lost her temper, if she just let her frustration boil over, they'd see it as the prophecy unfolding. I had to teach her a level of control no child should ever have to learn. There were moments of peace, though, fleeting ones. We'd sneak out at night and lie in the field behind our house, looking at the same stars the prophets once gazed upon. "Why do they hate me, Kenji?" she asked me once, her voice so small. I looked at her, at the horns that were now more pronounced, stark and black against her hair. "They don't hate you," I lied. "They're just afraid." But it was a lie. Of course they hated her. They hated what she represented. They hated the fear she made them feel. They had lit a fire of paranoia and persecution, and they believed that by throwing my sister into it, they could put it out. They never considered that they were just giving the flames something to feed on. They were stoking the very embers of the apocalypse they so desperately wanted to prevent. The turning point wasn't some grand cinematic explosion. The sky didn't split open. The seas didn't boil. No, it was quiet. And it was brutal. They came for her on her 10th birthday. The Emergency Act had been amended. Assessments were no longer enough. Now the mandate was containment. They broke the door down before dawn. Not soldiers this time, but a specialized unit, their faces hidden behind black helmets. They moved with a chilling efficiency, tranquilizer guns ready. My parents fought back, and they were thrown aside. I tried to stand in their way, and a heavy boot sent me to the floor. They cornered her in her bedroom. But Nayuta wasn't screaming. She was just standing there, clutching the new sketchbook I had given her. Her eyes darted from one faceless soldier to the next, and then to me, lying on the ground, with blood trickling from my mouth. I saw the exact moment her confusion finally shattered and gave way to something else. It wasn't anger, it was understanding. A terrible, soul-crushing understanding. She finally understood. They would never stop. They would never see her. They would only ever see the monster they'd imagined. A man raised his rifle, the tranquilizer dart aimed right at her heart. He defined the situation as an immediate threat, and in that one moment, it became real. Something in the air shifted. The pressure in the room dropped. The light from the windows seemed to bend around her. It wasn't a conscious act. It was a reaction, an activation. All those years of suppressed fear, suffocating control, whispered hatred, it was all a crucible, and the world, with its final, violent push, had just forged the very thing it feared most. The man who aimed at her was thrown backward, not by a physical force, but as if the space he occupied had simply rejected his presence. The others raised their weapons, and the weapons began to groan, the metal twisting and contorting as if under intense heat. They didn't melt, they just came apart, clattering to the floor in pieces. The soldiers, the zealots, the crusaders, they just stood there, disarmed and terrified, finally facing a power that wasn't just a story in a book. The power that erupted from her wasn't fire and brimstone. It was a power of unraveling. The structures they had built their certainty on started to fail. Their technology flickered and died. Their communications went silent. The very laws of physics they counted on seemed to just grow tired and lie down for a rest whenever she was near. This was the great irony. The prophecy didn't make Nayuta the destroyer. Their reaction to it did. It's a pattern as old as myth itself. You know the stories. A king is told his son will kill him, so he abandons the child, and by doing that, sets the boy on the exact path that leads him back home to kill a man he doesn't know is his father. They feared a monster, so they treated her like one, poked her, prodded her, and tormented her until the monster had no choice but to be born. It was a self-fulfilling prophecy of the most tragic kind. In their terror, they finally saw their apocalypse. But it wasn't the one they had read about. It wasn't some beast laying waste to cities. It was the quiet, systematic collapse of their own systems, brought on by their own militant fear. They declared war on a child, and in doing so, they declared war on the very fabric of their own reality. The destruction they faced wasn't a punishment from God. It was the consequence of their own actions, a cosmic receipt for a debt of cruelty they'd been racking up for 10 years. That chaos didn't last forever. Power, once it's unleashed, eventually finds its level. The world didn't end in a blaze of glory, but in a deafening silence. The systems built on control and aggression had crumbled under the weight of their own paranoia. In the aftermath, we left the ruins of our old life behind. We just walked. We walked until the grey, broken cities gave way to green fields, and the silence of dead technology was replaced by the simple sound of the wind. We found our way to the coast, to a place where the world felt new. I see her now, standing at the edge of the ocean. The waves wash over her feet, and she doesn't flinch. The horns are still there, a permanent reminder of the destiny she was assigned. But here, under this vast, open sky, they just look like a part of her. Nothing more, nothing less. The sea breeze doesn't whisper prophecies of doom. It just is. And so we're left with that great, unanswered question. Was Nayuta's destiny fixed from the start? Was she always meant to bring about the fall? Or was the prophecy just a warning, a glimpse of one possible future out of a million? A future that only happened because people chose fear over love. But watching my sister draw new pictures in the wet sand, I have to believe in choice. The world made its choice. It chose fear. I made mine. I chose her. What do you believe? Are prophecies an unchangeable script we are all forced to follow? Or can free will and human choice alter the outcome? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. In the end, the world looked into a child's eyes and saw the apocalypse. They saw the end of days, but all I ever saw was my sister. And as we stand here on the edge of a new, quieter world, I think maybe that was the only choice that ever really mattered.
This book is your beginner's guide to understanding Scripture. Find peace, build relationships, and discover purpose in today's world. Ready to decode the Bible? Find Bible Decoded available on Amazon now.
If this content blesses you and you'd like to support our mission, you can buy me a coffee or give a super thanks. Every contribution helps us create more content to inspire and uplift others. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on my future videos.